Hey guys, today we're going to be learning to do some operations with radicals. We're going to add and subtract them, and then we're also going to multiply them. So it should be pretty simple, but we're just going to make sure we know how to do this. When you're adding and subtracting, you want to make sure you have the same radicand and the same index. So same radicand, those are the numbers underneath, and the same little number for your index. If you don't, you can't add them together. And then you always want to try to simplify your radicals first to make sure that you can add them. Don't forget that if you need to, you can pause this video at any time and write down what you're seeing. So when I look at this first one, they all have the same index. They all have an imaginary little 2 right there. But they all have different radicands. So I'm probably going to need to take the 54 and the 24 and break them down to see if I can simplify anything. I can't do anything with the 6 because it would just break down into 2 and 3. So for the 54, I know it breaks down into 9 and 6, and then 3 and 3, and then 3 and 2. So when I'm looking at this, I'm looking for 2, so I'd circle that 3. I know a 3 is going to come outside. There's a negative right here, so I want to make sure I keep that negative. And then this 3 and the 2 has to stay inside, and that'll make 6, because 3 times 2 is 6. There's nothing to simplify here, so I just drop down that minus 3, square root of 6. And then when I break down the 24, I'd get 8 and 3, and then 2 and 4, and 2 and 2. And I'm looking again for pairs. So I have a pair of 2's right here, and a 2 and a 3 left over. Again, I have that minus sign there, so I'm going to have a 2 square root of 6. So far, that should be a review of the things that we did the earlier part of the week. And now, you're just going to combine like terms. When you're adding, you keep the radicand the same the entire time. It's like a variable x. You're just adding those numbers in the front. We'll take a break.
Sorry, I'm going to change that directive. Before the bell rings, please send somebody down to grab the report cards and distribute your beginning of the alphabet today so those go out. Otherwise, the kids are waiting till next week. Thank you.
Alright, so negative 3 minus 3 more is negative 6, and then minus 2 is negative 8. And then I just drop down the square root of 6, because it just comes along for the ride. And that's all I have to do. When looking at the next one, I see they all have the same index. There's all 5, but I need to simplify things. So this is just going to stay negative 3 fifth root of 6. Because if I break down 6, it's just 2 and 3, and there's nothing that's going to come outside. The 96 can break down. 96 breaks down into, should have done this ahead of time, 6 and 16, and then 6 breaks down into 2 and 3, and 16 breaks down into 4 and 4, and then we get lots of 2's. Then I'm looking for 5 of a kind, so I get 5 2's. Oh, that's a 3, so let's just switch that real quick. I have 5 2's, so a 2 is going to come out, and it's multiplied to that 3, and then the fifth root of 3 stays in. And then over here, this minus just comes out front, and a minus is a plus. And then when I'm looking at this, none of them have the same radicand, so I'm done. So I'm just going to rewrite that nicely. 3 fifth root of 6 plus 6 fifth root of 3 plus fifth root of 2. And there's nothing else I can do with that, so I just circle it and I'm done. So that's adding and subtracting. It should be pretty simple. You're just trying to simplify it and then add together like terms. And then we have multiplying. We have some on the back as well. Before you multiply, you have to have the same index. And then when you're multiplying, you first should simplify it as much as you can, and then multiply it, and then simplify again. So before we do that, I need you to know that if I have the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, I would just get the square root of 4, which is equal to 2. So when you multiply the same square root together, it cancels and gives you the number underneath. It'll work for anything. If I have the square root of 57 times the square root of 57, it is just 57. So no matter what, if you multiply the same square roots together, it gives you the number underneath. So if I'm looking over here at number 1 for this example, I have the square root of 8 times the square root of 8. So I'm just going to drop down this negative 4, and then the square root of 8 times the square root of 8 is just 8. So now I have negative 4 times 8, which is negative 32. And that's all I do for that one. On this one, I multiply the numbers in the front. 3 times 1 is just 3. And then the square root of 3 times the square root of 10 is the square root of 30. I should check 30 to make sure it doesn't break down. 30 breaks down into 3 and 10, and then 2 and 5. So there's no pairs to pull out, so I just leave it the 3 square root of 30. Multiplying seems pretty easy so far. We're just multiplying the numbers in the front, and then you multiply the numbers underneath. When I look at this one, it looks a little more complicated because I got big numbers going on. So I'm going to break those down. 135 breaks down into 5 and 27. And then 27 breaks down into 3 and 9. And 3 and 3. And then I'm also going to, so far I need 7 to escape, and I do not have 7. So then I break down 162. 162 is divisible by 2. And 81. And then 9 and 9. And then 3 and 3 and 3 and 3. Again, I don't have 7. So when I go to do this one, 3 times 2 is 6. And when I multiply the 135 times 162, I'm going to get this really large number. But I already broke down these two over here. So up here would be 21,870. So now I can look at all of their factors to see if I have 7. And I do. I have 7 3s. And then I have a 2 and a 5 left over. So I'm going to pull out one of those 3s and multiply it to the 6. And then the 7th root of 5 times 2 is 10. I'm going to take that off my desk so it's not there forever. Alright, and then we have multiplication like this. So we just distribute the 15 to both things. 15 times the square root of 3 is the square root of 45 with a negative in the front. And then square root of 15 times 2 is the square root of 30. We already tried to break down 30 on the front, so we know it doesn't break down, but you should try 45. And 45 breaks down into 3 and 15, and then 3 and 5. So I have a pair of 3s. I can take out a 3 and leave that 5. And then just leave it with a plus square root of 30. And then finally we have a lovely problem right there. We're going to have to FOIL. So when I have a problem like this, I take the 3 to the 5, and that gives me 15. And then 3 times the square root of 2 gives me 3 square root of 2. And then square root of 2 times 5 gives me 5 square root of 2. And then square root of 2 times square root of 2, we talked about on the front when they're the same, it just gives me 2. Then I just combine like terms. 15 plus 2 is 17. And 3 square root of 2 plus 5 square root of 2 is 8 square root of 2. And I'm done again. And those are all the notes I have for you today. You should do the practice problems now, and please reach out if you have questions.